Breaking news from heaven, another impossible healing through the intercession of the youngest modern saint, is shaking the Catholic world. A young girl's tears of agony have transformed into shouts of joy, and medical experts are calling it absolutely inexplicable. What you're about to witness proves that Carlo Acutis isn't slowing down. He's accelerating his mission from heaven. Smash that subscribe button right away and share this urgent miracle report with everyone you know, because this healing happened just recently. And the evidence is so overwhelming that even skeptics are left without answers. Stay with me until the end, because I'll reveal the exact prayer this family prayed that unlocked heaven's intervention. The hospital corridor echoed with a mother's desperate sobbing. In a pediatric ward somewhere in Europe, parents were watching their precious daughter slip away day by day, hour by hour. The medical team had tried everything. Specialists from multiple countries had been consulted. Prayer chains spanning continents had been activated. Yet the child's condition only worsened. But what nobody in that hospital realized was that heaven was already moving. A teenage saint in jeans and sneakers was preparing to demonstrate once again that God's power hasn't diminished in the digital age. The intersection of human desperation and divine intervention was about to create another chapter in Carlo Acutis' extraordinary heavenly mission. Let me take you back to where this miracle story actually begins. Not in a hospital, but in a small chapel where a desperate mother knelt before the Blessed Sacrament, her heart shattered into pieces. This young girl, whose parents have requested privacy during the investigation process, had been living a normal, joyful childhood until a sudden illness struck with terrifying force. Within weeks, a vibrant, active child became bedridden, suffering from symptoms that baffled medical professionals across multiple disciplines. The medical mystery was compounded by the fact that traditional treatments produced no improvement whatsoever. Every medication trial failed. Every therapeutic intervention proved ineffective. The child's body seemed to be fighting against itself in ways that defied standard diagnostic categories. But here's where the story takes its first supernatural turn. The girl's mother had recently attended a presentation about St. Carlo Acutis at her parish. She had been moved by his story but hadn't given it much thought afterward, until the night her daughter's condition became critical. That evening, unable to sleep, she opened her phone and randomly came across a video about Carlo's miracles. Random, or was something else orchestrating this divine appointment? As she watched testimonies of other families whose children had been healed through Carlo's intercession, something ignited in her spirit. This wasn't mere hope. It was supernatural certainty that Carlo was the key to her daughter's healing. She woke her husband, and together they made a decision that would change everything. They would begin an intensive novena to St. Carlo Acutis, incorporating physical pilgrimage, Eucharistic devotion, and complete surrender to God's will. But they added something unique. They promised that if their daughter was healed, they would dedicate their family to spreading Carlo's message of Eucharistic love to young people worldwide. The first 3 days of the novena brought no visible change. If anything, the medical reports grew more alarming. Doctors began preparing the family for the worst possible outcomes, but the parents refused to waver in their prayers. On the 4th day, something unusual occurred. The young girl, who had been largely unresponsive due to her illness, suddenly opened her eyes and spoke clearly for the first time in weeks. Her words sent chills through everyone present. "Mama, there's a boy here in jeans. He says not to cry anymore." The medical staff dismissed this as fever-induced hallucination, but the mother knew better. She pulled out her phone and showed her daughter a picture of Carlo Acutis. The child's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. "Yes, that's him, the nice boy who comes to sit on my bed." Comment below if you've ever had a child or family member describe seeing saints or angels during serious illness. These testimonies are powerful reminders that heaven is closer than we think. What happened over the next 72 hours defies natural explanation. The young girl's symptoms began reversing at a pace that medical professionals called impossible. Lab results that had shown dangerous abnormalities started normalizing. Scans that had revealed concerning pathology began showing improvement. But the transformation wasn't just physical. The child's entire demeanor changed. The pain that had caused constant crying disappeared. The fear that had filled her eyes was replaced by inexplicable peace. She began telling her parents detailed stories about conversations with the computer boy saint who visited her regularly. These weren't vague childhood fantasies. The girl described specific details about Carlo's life that she had no way of knowing: his love for video games, his daily mass attendance, his work documenting Eucharistic miracles, even his sneaker collection. Her parents had never discussed these details with her. On the 7th day of the novena, doctors performed comprehensive testing to assess the full extent of the child's condition. What they discovered left the medical team in stunned silence. The illness that had been destroying this young girl's body had completely disappeared. Not improved, disappeared. The lead physician, who had treated thousands of pediatric cases over a 30-year career, made a statement that was later documented in the medical records. "In my professional opinion, there is no medical explanation for this child's recovery. The speed, completeness, and nature of this healing fall outside all known parameters of natural healing processes." But here's what makes this miracle especially powerful: the healing wasn't just accepted passively by the family. They immediately began fulfilling their promise to Carlo. While their daughter was still in the hospital completing final observation tests, the parents started a social media campaign sharing their testimony. Within days, their story had reached hundreds of thousands of people. Prayer groups dedicated to Carlo's intercession began forming worldwide. Young people especially resonated with the message that a teenage saint was actively working miracles in real time. The family obtained official relics of St. Carlo and began visiting parishes, schools, and youth groups to share their daughter's healing story. But they didn't just talk about the miracle. They taught young people Carlo's core message about the Eucharist being the highway to heaven. The ripple effects have been extraordinary. Multiple parishes report significant increases in youth attendance at Eucharistic adoration. Schools that heard the family's testimony established perpetual adoration chapels. Teenagers who had drifted from faith returned to the sacraments after hearing how Carlo had healed a child their age. This is classic Carlo Acutis. Even his miracles serve his mission of drawing young people to Jesus through the Eucharist. Don't forget to subscribe, because what I'm about to share next reveals the specific prayer strategy this family used, and you can implement it starting today for your own urgent needs. The mother later revealed the exact novena structure they followed during those critical 9 days. First, they attended daily Mass as a family whenever possible, receiving Holy Communion with specific intention for their daughter's healing through Carlo's intercession. Second, they obtained a first-class relic of Carlo, a piece of cloth that had touched his incorrupt body, and kept it near their daughter at all times, whether in the hospital or at home. They would place it gently on the affected areas while praying. Third, they prayed the rosary together as a family each evening, offering each decade for their daughter's restoration and for all sick children worldwide. They specifically asked Our Lady, whom Carlo had loved so deeply, to join her prayers to theirs. Fourth, they made concrete promises about how they would use the miracle to advance God's kingdom. This wasn't bargaining with God, it was aligning their will with heaven's mission. They committed to becoming active evangelizers, particularly among youth who had lost faith. Fifth, and perhaps most importantly, they maintained absolute trust even when circumstances appeared hopeless. They repeated Carlo's own words: "All people are born as originals, but many die as photocopies." They refused to be photocopies of despair and doubt, choosing instead to be originals of faith and trust. The combination of these elements created what the mother describes as a spiritual atmosphere where miracles could manifest. It wasn't magic or superstition. It was cooperating with heaven's desire to demonstrate God's power through Carlo's intercession. What makes this recent miracle especially significant is its timing. We're living in an era when young people are experiencing unprecedented levels of anxiety, depression, and spiritual confusion. Suicide rates among children and teenagers are climbing. Loneliness epidemics are affecting entire generations. Faith communities are struggling to reach youth with the gospel message. Into this crisis, God is raising up Carlo Acutis as a beacon of hope. Every miracle through his intercession sends a clear message. Heaven cares deeply about young people. God hasn't abandoned this generation, and supernatural intervention is still available to those who pray with faith. The young girl who was healed represents countless other children and teenagers suffering in hospitals, struggling with mental health crises, fighting addiction, or simply feeling lost and purposeless. Her healing proves that Carlo's intercession is particularly powerful for the young. But there's another dimension to this miracle that investigators have found fascinating. The healing occurred during a time of significant cultural attack on the Eucharist and traditional Catholic teaching. Simultaneously, a surge of young people returning to traditional liturgy and Eucharistic devotion has been documented worldwide. Carlo appears to be orchestrating from heaven exactly what he promised during his earthly life, a youth movement centered on the Eucharist. His miracles serve as supernatural confirmation that his message was authentic and remains urgently relevant. Medical documentation of this healing is currently being compiled for potential submission to church authorities. While official recognition as a miracle for canonization purposes requires extensive investigation, the family isn't waiting for bureaucratic processes to begin sharing their testimony. They understand that Carlo's mission is urgent. Young people are dying physically, spiritually, emotionally, and they need to know about the teenage saint who understands their world and can intercede powerfully for their needs. Share this video everywhere because someone in your network needs to hear that miracles are still happening through Carlo's intercession. Your share might be the divine appointment that saves a child's life. Reports continue flooding in from families worldwide claiming healings, conversions, and interventions through Carlo's prayers. While not all can be verified as miraculous in the strict canonical sense, the pattern is undeniable. This young saint is extraordinarily active in his heavenly ministry. Some healings involve physical conditions like the recent case. Others involve mental health breakthroughs where teenagers suddenly overcome depression or anxiety after novenas to Carlo. Still others involve protection from danger, provision in poverty, or guidance in major life decisions. The common thread: almost all involve young people, most incorporate Eucharistic devotion, and virtually all lead to deeper faith commitment. This recent miracle of the young girl reminds us that heaven isn't distant or disconnected from earthly struggles. Saints aren't marble statues. They're living, active members of Christ's body who continue their mission of love and service from the other side of the veil. Carlo Acutis proved during his earthly life that teenagers could be saints. Through his heavenly miracles, he's proving that saints can transform teenage lives. The same compassion that drove him to defend bullied classmates and help struggling friends continues animating his intercession today. What impossible situation are you facing? What child in your life needs healing? What teenager do you know who's lost hope? Carlo's recent miracle shows that heaven is listening, God is acting, and miracles remain available to those who pray with persistent faith. Here's the prayer you can start praying today, based on what the family used. Saint Carlo Acutis, you who loved young people and dedicated your life to helping them know Jesus through the Eucharist, I desperately need your intercession. State your specific need clearly and honestly. Please present this request to our loving God, joining your prayers to mine. If this healing is according to God's will, obtain it for me swiftly. I promise to use this grace to grow in holiness and help others, especially young people, discover the beauty of Catholic faith. Help me trust completely in God's plan, whether the answer comes quickly or requires patient waiting. Amen. Add to this prayer a commitment to attend Mass more frequently, receive Holy Communion with greater devotion, and spend time in Eucharistic adoration when possible. Obtain a relic or blessed image of Carlo to keep near you. Most importantly, align your request with Carlo's mission promise to use any granted grace to draw others, especially youth, closer to Jesus. The tears of the young girl and her family have been transformed into joy. Your tears can be next. The same saint who healed a dying child in Europe is ready to intercede for your impossible situation. Make sure you're subscribed and notifications are turned on because as more miracle reports come in, I'll be sharing them immediately. These stories aren't just inspiring, they're practical proof that prayer works, saints intercede, and God still performs miracles. Comment below with your prayer intentions, and let's create a community of faith supporting each other through Carlo's intercession. Share what you're praying for, and commit to praying for others who comment. Together, we can create a global novena network that storms heaven with requests. The teenage saint in sneakers who loved computers and the Eucharist is still changing lives from heaven. Your miracle testimony might be the next one I report. Your healing could be the evidence that convinces someone else to pray with faith. Don't wait another moment. Begin your novena today. Obtain your relic or holy card. Make your promises to God about how you'll use the requested grace. Then pray with the confidence of someone who knows that a powerful teenage saint is presenting your needs directly to the throne of God. Tears turn to joy for one family. Let it happen for yours too.